Hi everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Talking Mental Health with me, Joe, and today I'm back with an old friend of mine from school days. It's Mr. Scott Styles. How are you, mate?
Hello there, how are you doing? Good, thank you.
I'm
Yourself?
good. So just for a little background, I went to primary school and secondary school with Scott, and then he messaged me recently because he noticed I was doing this and he's kind of going on a mental health journey as well. So I figured, why not put us together and make something happen? So Scott, just give us a little bit of background about yourself, mate, and just talk about little Scott growing up in school and what life was like before you turned into a man.
Yeah, so as you've just alluded to, mate, we were very close actually. You used to play football. I remember in your back garden. I used to boot the ball over, and your dad used to go mad into the factory behind your house. But so that was a nice, a lot of good memories. To be fair, Walton Park. I think if I've got it right, Walton Park.
On, yeah.
So I, first of all, obviously moved over to Sale from living in Earlham. I don't remember that. I was very young, so moved to a pub called The Vine. Any listeners from Sale will probably jump for joy at the thought of that pub. It was a pretty decent pub. And then that's where you and I connected very well when I lived there. Going through primary school, we were good friends. And then moving on, initially, if you remember, Joe, I was meant to go to Ashton-on-Mersey, but my application wasn't put in time. Typical father.
Don't remember that.
Yeah, so I was meant to go to Ashton-on-Mersey school. My dad put the application in too late, and I ended up going to BTH. But in all honesty, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Joe, what a dream move that was. Fantastic school, fantastic teachers, fantastic people, and as we've just alluded to before we started recording, we probably both made a lot of good friends there that we maybe need to reconnect with in the future. So if you are listening, please feel free to drop me a message or Joe a message. So moving on from that, unfortunately we moved back to Earlham, so it was a bit of a struggle for me in terms of school and social life, because school was almost an hour and a half on public transport away. So my social life almost migrated to where I lived. And school was simply kept as, I was in school and I had friends at school, but, I was never really going to do anything with the people at school. So I think that's probably where I maybe separated myself a little bit from the friends that I had there to building the new friendships that I had back in Earlham. So moving on from that, I decided that I wanted to join the Air Force. I actually decided that I wanted to join the Army because that's what my best mate at the time was doing. And when I went to the AFCO, they convinced me to join the Air Force. Went back to school, realised that I needed to get a couple of GCSEs under my belt, so I'd knuckled down. Again, for those of you who know me, I was a bit of an idiot in school for the most part. But again, I go back to the fact that our school, the teachers, the people that were around us, were incredible people. They never gave up on anyone, and they certainly never gave up on me. And I ended up joining the RAF. So that takes me to 16 years old, I suppose, Joe.
Yeah, and it was, I remember, I'm similar to you. I've got a lot of memories of just us playing football. I remember going to the cliff with you once. I don't know if you remember, at the Sale Hotel, your mum let us play FIFA once on the big screen. Do you remember that?
Yeah, God, yeah. Right at the back of the pub, yeah.
Yeah. But honestly, I'm not going to lie, right? My fondest memory of you is what you wrote in I think you wrote it in my book, when we left BTH.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't remember the exact wording, but the gist of it was something along the lines of, we've never been the best of friends, but we've always had a close friendship, even when we've had our own group of friends. And it was, it was something like dead simple like that, but I never forgot it. And I've still got the book, and it just that little phrase just meant so much to me. And I don't know if I ever told you that.
Lovely.
Yeah, I always like that one because, like you just said, I'd known you since I was 4 to about 16, yeah. And like you said, we weren't always the closest of friends, but especially when we were younger, we played a lot of football. But then, I guess at BTH, we kind of not went our own ways, but we had our own friendship groups, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. When you wrote that message in the book, I thought, you know what, you couldn't have said that any better.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, mate.
Yeah,
thank you.
No, thank you for writing it. So just talk to us a little bit about life in the RAF. What's that like for someone coming out of school and going into that?
I've probably got mixed emotions on this, but I'll give you the positive spin as opposed to the negative spin because it's far more positive than it is negative. For the people that are going to watch this video, me and my wife got together when we were very, very young, and I joined the Air Force, obviously people will understand that within the Air Force, within the realms of that job, you know, you're here, there and everywhere. And at the very minimum, you work Monday to Friday in pretty much anywhere in the country. You know, my first posting, for example, was North Wales in a place called RAF Valley. So it sort of, we had a child when I was quite young. I think my wife got pregnant when I was 17, had the baby when I was 18. So I didn't really want to live apart from them. So we decided to get married because that's how we could get a house through the military. And obviously we knew we wanted to be together. So that was that. So we got married and we tried shortly after for a second baby because we said, if we're gonna build a family, let's do it while we're young, and then hopefully we'll be, you know, very, very close knit in terms of we're not that far out in age and we can enjoy the same things when the boys get older, or the boy and girl, or whatever it was. 2 boys it is. So yeah, that was that. So it's a fantastic life. It's an incredible life, but it is what you make of it. That's the problem. People will moan about it because it doesn't suit certain people. You know, if they're living away from their family and they're very homely, then yeah, I completely get it. You know, but unfortunately, you've joined a job that is not suited to what you want from life. And I suppose, you know, looking at the mental health side of it, does that have an impact? I would say massively, you know, because ultimately the Air Force haven't done anything wrong. You know, they are telling you that you could be posted up the top of Scotland or at the bottom of the country in Portsmouth. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you could even go to Cyprus. I went to Cyprus, which we'll come on to probably in a bit. But, you know, you can be posted anywhere in the world. You know, your job is essentially, you know, at their beck and call. Essentially, you know, that's the be all and end all. So you know what you're signing up for. There's quite a common military saying actually for when somebody wants you to do a pretty rubbish job, and that's you signed on the dotted line. You know, so it's and it's annoying, but it's true. You know, it is true. So yeah, for me, it's been a fantastic career, fantastic opportunities. Just about to start a degree, which is completely free. The Air Force are paying for it. Never thought I'd get to that sort of education level. You probably didn't think I'd get to that education level either. Not the brightest spark in the book. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, you know, I've played plenty of football. I went to Las Vegas playing football. I've been to Germany playing football. You know, the opportunities, skiing. I'd never skied before I joined the RAF. Now I like to think I'm a pretty decent skier. You know, you get to do adventurous training, so canoeing, mountain climbing, you know, hill walking, all the good stuff, you know, and again, you know, it is what you make of it. You've got to put your name down for these sorts of things, and you know, you've got to be willing to throw yourself into these sort of things as well. But I think one of the biggest things it's taught me is, I suppose, is resilience, because you've got to have that ability to be able to go, okay, I'm getting messed around here, but you know, this is my job, you know, and you've got to become resilient to that. I think that's the key component of this career, you know, being adaptable. I'll get hammered for that as well if my RAF friends see that, because one of our values is adapt and overcome. So, but you do have to be adaptable. You do, you know, and that's important, I think, and be resilient to the fact that you're going to be asked to do things that sometimes you don't want to do. You know, I've been away pretty much now for at least 3 or 4 months every single year for the past 8 years. So that's a strain on your family. It's a strain on you. You know, it's been a strain on me as well. And then obviously you add into it, as we're all aware of, you know, our life problems. You know, you start building this pot of, you know, already you've got a little bit of a full pot of problems, and then you add the outside problems into it. You know, the stresses of general stresses of life, you know, finance, whatever it may be, you know, your girlfriend's giving you earache when you're not there to sort it out, or the kids are being naughty, or, you know, the bleeding, I don't know, the fridge is broke, you know, it's all them sorts of things that all of a sudden it starts adding up, and that's where you've got to be able to build that, you know, that ability to be calm, remain calm, and think logically through it, you know, and have that resilience about you. So yeah, so in a nutshell, mate,
not your typical 9 to 5 then.
No, 100% it's not. It's not. No, and that's but that's what's good about it. You know, I think for me that's one of the good things about it. It's not a monotonous job where I go and sit at the same desk every single day and do the same thing day in, day out. Some people enjoy that sort of thing, you know, and I'm not knocking it. But for me, I like variety. I like, you know, I mean, essentially, I can change my job role every 3 years. You know, within the trade, there is that many different available jobs within my trade category that I could go and do something different every 3 to 4 years, 5 years. So, you know, that's the good thing about it. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. I'm very similar to that. I like to be up and moving, and you know, I like the variation of things. I don't like a routine, or I like a routine to a point, and then I need a change. Sounds like we're very similar. So I think, yeah, that's good. So, you know, you mentioned mental health before, and obviously these conversations are all based around mental health, and you know, men talking to each other about everything and anything. Just talk to me a little bit about your mental health journey, kind of where it started and how it's taken you forward to where you are at the moment.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I lost my mother. That was Joe. You met my mum. You know, she's one in a million. She was an incredible lady. And unfortunately, as I say about the job, you know, a bit of resilience, all that kind of stuff. I was currently on deployment out in Cyprus on Opshada, which is our current operation that's going on at the minute. So I was woken up very, very early in the morning by obviously my sister. She was pretty much, you know, screaming down the phone, you need to get home, you need to get home. To which obviously, you know, it's tough to take, very, very tough to take. And when you're out on stuff like that, when you're working away with the lads and the girls, and you know, there's not really that much privacy. You know, you're all in it together. And the moment something like that happens, everybody knows about it. You know, it's not like something that you can keep under your hat and sort of, you know, deal with yourself. Everybody knows instantly. The good thing about that in this environment is that everybody is sympathetic towards it, because they know if it was them, they'd want the same treatment back. So thankfully, my unit at the time, give them a mention, Wanak, the wing commander there, basically said he's going to pay for a flight for me to get back home from Paphos. So I was shot straight up the road to the airport, to Paphos airport. They held the gap and replaced me, and they chucked me on a plane and sent me back to Manchester, which is obviously where my mum and dad lived at the time, being a fellow Manc as I am. So that was tough. Losing my mum was tough. I'm not going to lie. It was very, very tough. I was very close to my mum, very close to both my parents, but my mum was, you know, I grew up with my mum when my dad was out working, pretty old-fashioned family in that sense that my dad used to go out and do the graft, you know, and my mum was the full-time parent as such. So then moving on from that, sort of, I'd say getting used to not having mum around, etc., etc. My father passed away, which was it was a struggle. You know, it was losing both your parents in the space of 2 years was just devastating, really devastating for the whole family. Both very unexpected deaths as well, and both sort of, you know, I'd only seen my dad the weekend before, and I'd spoke to him that day, and you know, he was chipper, he was over the moon about. He was in the Lake District, so he was buzzing that he was with his mate and, you know, having a laugh and this, that and the other. And he's like, speak to you later, pal. You know, phone goes down and it's sort of like, Jesus, you know, how do you deal with this one? Unfortunately, there's more to come from that, really, I suppose, in that my lovely wife, Christina, lost her brother and a sister. So my dad, her brother, her sister was pretty much within 18 months of each other. So it was, you know, 3 significant losses in that time. But over the period of sort of 3-4 years, there was 4 very significant family losses. And I won't lie to you, Joe, I struggled. You know, I really struggled after the death of my dad. I really, really, really struggled, and I didn't know what it was. You know me very personally, that the people that watch this probably might not know me very personally, but growing up, you would have known what I would have, the sort of man I would have become, you know, as I have that opinion of you as well. And maybe we're slightly different to what we think of each other, but we won't be that far wrong. You know, your values are set at a very young age. You will know that for me to go to somebody and say, I'm struggling mentally, was not a thing that I was ever going to do. You know, I was never going to do it. Simple as that. And I started trying to do a little bit of self-help, you know, reading a few books, and I'm pretty into psychology anyway. Before all this happened, I like reading sort of people's autobiographies and all that kind of stuff. And so I started reading about the mental health side of things, and it came to a head when I wasn't sleeping. I literally went, I think, 4 or 5 days not sleeping. So coming home from work, you know, trying to pretend everything's okay, pretending that I'm going to sleep, not sleeping, getting out of bed, going to work. And in the end, I became delusional. You know, literally, I was seeing things. I was going, not mad, but, you know, I was on the brink of something needs to happen here. So I went to the medical centre at the RAF. And I can tell you now, and if anybody in the RAF is viewing this video, it's very important for you to know this, because my biggest fear was they're going to throw me out here, you know. And my opinion was, as soon as I go in there and say that I'm struggling mentally, you know, they'll sort of say, right, he's done, sort of thing. That was my opinion of what the RAF did. Little did I know, really. Little did I know. So I went in there, obviously very nervous about potentially losing my career, but I knew that something had to change in my life. I knew it did. So the first person that I seen was a squadron leader, doctor. And basically I was told, what are you worried for? I don't understand why you're worried. You know, we all go through tough times, and it sounds to me like you're having a very, very tough time, and we can help you with that. That's not a problem. Are you still there, Joe?
Yeah, I've got you, mate. I lost your video for a sec, but I can see you again now.
Sorry, I'm just going to have a drink.
Yeah, go ahead. Do the same.
Crikey, it's hot, isn't it?
Oh. I can feel myself sweating.
I know I can. So from that point, went to the doctors. Doctor said, don't worry about it. It's no problem. What you're being silly for was one of the responses, you know. We all have troubled times. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about this. So essentially, my mind was put at ease in an instant by this person. And it was actually, it was a big release, you know, in terms of thinking to myself, God, I've walked into that doctor thinking I'm going to lose my career. You know, she's going to think I'm mad, blah, de, blah, de, blah. All the things that naturally will go through somebody's head that hasn't seeked out that help yet. And it's perfectly natural, perfectly understandable. So, for those that may be listening on the video that haven't gone and got help, what you're thinking is exactly what we all thought before we all got help. You know, that's a fact. And it's really important to note that to people. However, as I said before, I couldn't have been more wrong about the military and the way that they've dealt with mental health. Obviously, I don't know what other companies are doing, big companies, big franchises. I can only tell you what the RAF's doing, and for me, they're at the the cutting edge of it. We've got centres set up, defence mental health units, DMHUs, where you can go and get CBT. You can go and speak to counsellors. It's set up in an environment that is welcoming, et cetera, et cetera. It's fantastic. So for me, we are at the cutting edge of it. That's just in my opinion, especially for an organisation. And it's very well dealt with in terms of, like I got, I think initially I was given 6 weeks off to essentially, recharge my batteries, try and get me back to me, with weekly meetings with the doctor, of which every time I met, it was sort of had a quick chat, how are you getting on? What have we worked through this week? Has it worked for you? So sleep hygiene was one of the big ones that I went through quite rigidly, just because of the fact that I wasn't sleeping. So moving on sort of after all this happened, I found it very important to try and stick into my routine, because I felt like if I wandered away from that routine, I would end up back in trouble. Back in the doctors, off work, back to square one. I didn't want that process, that 12-week total process of seeing counsellors, seeing doctors, being diagnosed in the end with PTSD, which is a strange one because PTSD in the military is usually associated with, the likes of the Afghan wars, the Iraq wars, people being shot at, people being bombed, etc. But PTSD is simply just post-traumatic stress, putting it simply for, civilians and military. And essentially I went through, trauma with the loss of my mum and the loss of my dad. So that was the diagnosis. So as I say, moving on 12 weeks, worked really hard, tried to get myself into a good position, felt okay. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't like jumping for joy or anything like that. It was, I'm glad that I'm sleeping. I'm glad that I've got back to some normality. I was working half days at work, which again, I go back to the work side of things. Work were fine with that. They just said, we'd rather have you back, in a good way than have you back for 2 weeks and then you having to go off again because, we haven't given you enough time. So, and then essentially all I did was allowed myself just a couple of freedoms at a time, so a little bit of beer. I do like a drink, I won't lie. I like to have a drink at a weekend with my friends and my family or whatever. So, a couple of weekends in a row, I had a couple of beers, nothing too crazy, just that, a couple of beers to allow my body to have that feeling again. I went heavy into trying to get fit. So I went heavy into the gym, bit of clean eating, all that kind of good stuff. Healthy mind, healthy body and all that kind of stuff. So moving on from that, when I realised actually that I could have these freedoms and I could still do what I was doing, I started to try and then branch it out a little bit so that the things that I hadn't tried before, for example, sleep hygiene. I'd never even bloody heard of sleep hygiene. If you'd have asked me that before I'd read up on it, I'd say, of course, I'll wash my bloody sheets. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I would have said sleep hygiene is.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started reading into it, actually, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Most nights now, I will not go to sleep without music on, without my lavender lamp, without, do you know what I mean? And everybody will go, oh, whatever, mate, that, but that's genuinely what sends me to sleep, and it gives me a fantastic sleep. So, that's, if you're willing to trade off a bad sleep just because you don't want to get that sort of thing, then more fool you, because I sleep really well now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I tried to branch out in terms of, reading up on the mental health side of things, looking at some of the things that I can do, and also to sort of spot the signs and symptoms in somebody else, because I knew what stage I'd got to have to go to the doctor. And if I'm honest, a lot of it was more my wife than it was me. She was almost threatening me, and bloody thank God she did,
Yeah.
However, I thought to myself, well, if there's more people out there like me that don't have that some person pushing them, or don't get to the point where it's that bad, or they don't realise, if I can spot the signs and symptoms of it, and I can say, listen, mate, I think we should have a chat, or I think you should go and see this person or that person, or, is everything okay? Sometimes is everything okay is enough for somebody to go, no, it's not actually, and sometimes just showing somebody that you care, and unfortunately, I don't think we do it enough. And that's why when I messaged you, because of the men's side of it, there's quite a few charities out there at the minute, actually, one's called Strong Men, and it deals with bereavement, and the fantastic, and ultimately, I don't think men, or women for that matter, if I'm honest, in my experience now, I don't think men or women are great at admitting it and then dealing with it. I think we're great at moaning, and I mean that in the nicest possible way,
Yeah.
but it's typically British. I'm sure Kelly would probably, your good lady would probably agree to that. It's typically British for us to moan, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes when somebody's moaning, they're actually telling you something more than just moaning, you know, and that's what I've learned through self-help, really, you know, to sort of see them signs of people, you know, moaning, but actually moaning for another reason, you know, a bit of a calling. And then, as we discussed prior to the video, I went on the mental health first aiders course, which is absolutely fantastic. That was a 2-day course run by the military. And I'm hoping this year, hopefully, or next year now, probably due to COVID, to get the funding to go on my mental health first aid instructor's course. So that's, I suppose, in a nutshell, that's my start to finish journey of mental health. But it's in the military, obviously, it's a big thing, because we know that, in essence, you know, if you're going away all the time, you know, you put under strain. We already had a thing called stress management anyway, human factors, all that kind of stuff. So mental health now has become quite a significant part of military life, you know, and for me, it's something that I want to be a part of moving forward. I want to be a huge part of that. And I'm going to push for it, you know, and thankfully I've seen the opportunity at the right time, and I've had my own personal mental health journey probably at the right time, where the RAF are starting to invest more money into it, you know, and looking at, as opposed to dealing with it in the med centre, can we deal with it within squadrons? Can we deal with it within, you know, sort of little groups of people? Can we deal with it within offices? So the ambition at Coningsby, where I'm based at the minute, is to essentially have a mental, so, you know, like you've got first aiders across any workplace, usually more than, you know, 50% of the workplace are trained first aiders. So we're looking at the possibility now of having very similar, but with mental health first aiders, you know, somebody that is just essentially there to, you know, signpost people. I mean, none of us are trained, you know, I'm not a psychologist, so I would never give advice or anything like that. You know, I would only ever point them in the right direction. But thankfully, I've been on that journey in the RAF, so I know what direction to point them in, whether that be the Padre, you know, maybe they just need to talk to the Padre, you know, maybe the Padre can help them with some things. If it's sort of another problem, we have a group called SAFA who can help with all that sort of thing. And, you know, in my eyes, if it's really serious, you know, we send them to the med centre, and then the med centre can do their work with them, and then they can signpost them wherever they need to go. So it's really good. I think it's a real positive situation now in the military, where mental health is being recognised first and foremost, because that's, I think, a key word for mental health, recognising mental health. You know, and it's important to recognise it, and B, you know, don't be scared of it. It's not scary. It is to you, but once you've got the help, once you know how people see it and don't view you as crazy or weak or, you know, whatever, you'll understand then that actually, you know, if we all play our part in it, if we're all willing to listen to people, and we're all willing to help and signpost and get them to the right people that can make that change, make that difference in their lives, you know, for some people it'll be a small adjustment, for some people it'll be a massive adjustment, but guess what? We'll get there. We'll make it, no doubt about it. You know, I never thought, sort of 18 months, 2 years ago, when I went on my mental health journey, that I'd be here right now talking to you so openly about my journey. You know, I thought I would have been embarrassed by it. I would have thought I'd have thought I was weak. You know, again, go back to all of the stalwarts that people will think right now about themselves. You know, I'm weak. I should just be stronger. I should just get over it. You know, it'll all go away eventually. You know, I'll stop overthinking about it. If you've got to that point, it's too late. You know, go and get the help, and once you've got the help, you'll feel much better. And it is non-judgmental. I can vouch for that. You know, I'm probably in one of the most manly environments in the military. You know, where banter is probably of a level that is very unacceptable by civvies. You know, the whole, you know, bravado situation. And I can tell you now, not one person in my entire organisation that I've come across that knows what I went through mental health wise has turned around and gone, oh, dry your eyes. princess. Do you know what I mean? Every single one of them have said, bloody hell, mate, good for you. I'm glad you're feeling better. You know, I'm really glad that you've made that journey and you've made that choice to feel better. And, you know, I'm always here, you know, if you ever need anything. And that's it. That's all we need to do. That's Joe, honestly, that is all we need to do. And people like yourself that are doing these videos, putting it on Facebook, you know, if you get 100 hits a time and then 100 people tell 100 of their friends, you know, we're doing our bit, aren't we, at the end of the day, to raise the awareness. And that's what we need to do, raise awareness of it.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, you know, there's a couple of things that you said there that I just wanted to kind of recap on. One, you said, you know, you were lucky in the sense that your wife actually recognized that you were struggling and she kind of forced you to go and get help, which I think is incredible. And you're lucky to have that. You also said that you knew that there was somewhere that you could go. And I think sometimes that's an issue that some people face, is they just don't know where to go. They don't know where to turn when they are really struggling. And if they're not looking to have a wife or a best friend or a brother or a sister or somebody really close to them to say, you know what, you look like you're struggling. Are you okay? And if they say no, they just don't know what the next step is after that. So I think that's really important. And I love the fact that you guys now, within your environment, you know, you've got that support network, but you've also got that place that you can go to if somebody knows that they are struggling, or you can see that someone's struggling. You've got that place where you can signpost them and say, might be time to just go and have a chat with someone. And I think for me, I'm not a big talker, but I love to listen. And this is why I'm doing this, because I think sometimes I'm of the opinion that a lot of people don't want to open up. One, because they're afraid of what's going to come back to them, but also because I think sometimes people genuinely don't feel like they're listened to. And that's one thing I've learned, especially with young people. You know, I do a lot of work with young people, and so many times they come back with the same thing. All we want is somebody to listen to what we have to say and to take our ideas on board. And I think that can, you know, go through not just teenagers, but young adults, you know, middle-aged people, as they get older. I think just having someone that you know, you can go and talk to them, and they're not going to judge you. They're not going to tell you, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. They're just going to listen to what you have to say, and they're just going to be there for you. I think that is huge.
Yeah, it is. They actually run courses on listening, effective listening, and I would love to go on one of them courses. And the Padres at work, that, you know, they do it very, very well. I mean, I do struggle to listen. I'm not going to lie. I'm very unfocused, you know, and I try my very best in terms of when somebody is speaking to me to give them that full attention, you know, and I do. My problem is if I'm in an environment where there's a lot going on, I'm a you know, I get distracted very, very easily. And that's you know, that's my bugbear sort of thing. But 100%, you know, if somebody comes to me that I generally, to protect myself as well, I will say, oh, can we just chat in this empty room, so that again, going back to what you're saying, so that I can understand what you're saying, and two, I can hear and listen to everything that you say, because, you know, honestly, I am a bit of a child when it comes to being able to be distracted. I am, again, going back to school. You probably don't find that as a surprise, but you know, and I still have that problem now. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Joe. And interestingly, I listen to. Do you listen to the Peter Crouch podcast, Being a Football Man?
Every now and again, yeah.
Yeah. So they've got this thing called Pass the Pod, and it's something that I think that we should do with mental health. You know, I think that's something that would be fantastic, because, as I say, you know, if you do this video now and we're talking about mental health, and you get 100 viewers, and out of them 100 viewers, they tell, you know, one of their mates, two of their mates, three of their mates, you know, and all of a sudden you've got a spider mesh going on. I'm sure we've all seen the COVID, you know, catch getting spread. You know, that's exactly what we could do with the mental health. You know, at the end of the day, if people know about it and people understand that, oh, I watched a video the other day, that guy went through it, and, you know, A's, you know, speaking really openly about it now. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I still have bad times. You know, I still have times where, but the difference is now is because I've got the tools and I've been through it and I've done it. A, it gets easier. B, the bad times get shorter. So instead of feeling low or, you know, crappy about myself or crappy about something else for a week, 2 weeks, now it might just be a couple of days, because I have the ability to recognize it. in myself, thankfully. And then I have the ability to be able to go, right, okay, you know, what do I need to do now to be able to deal with this effectively and quickly, you know, before it spirals out of control. And I think that's probably my key learning factor from everything that I've been through, is the ability to be able to now recognize it in myself and to then be able to deal with it, you know, from my inner self, you know, as opposed to having to go back to the doctors or having to go back to, you know, my counsellor, or having to go to my wife and saying I'm really struggling, you know, blah blah blah. I mean, don't get me wrong, your wife is very different. Me and Christina speak all of the time, but that they're the biggest positives to come out of it all. In that, you know, that for me is, I feel comfortable now. I feel comfortable in myself. Even when I feel low, I feel comfortable with myself, because I know that, you know, I've been here before. It's not that bad. You know, don't get me wrong, it's not that great, but it's not that bad, and I can deal with it. So, you know, that's the positives. It's only, I think, essentially the unknown of not knowing whether you're ever going to be able to deal with it. You know, going back to the people that haven't sought help or seek help, not knowing whether you can deal with it is probably the biggest fear. You know, along with, again, you know, am I going mad? Do people think I'm weak? You know, will I be judged? Blah 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 blah. The answer to everything is no. You won't. You know, you won't be judged. And once you start learning and understanding the way you work as a person, you know, that's when you'll be able to move on with your life. You know,
I think having experience is key, isn't it? You know, they always say the hardest time you go through something is the first time, or the hardest step you'll take is the first step. And once you've made that step and you can go back and say, okay, well, I got through it the first time, I can get through this again, or I know how to deal with it better now, or, you know, last time I didn't do that, so this time I'm going to do this. I think that's key, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, mate.
Not that you want people to go through it, but I think it's important that once you have gone through it, you have a better understanding. And I'm sure now you could have a conversation with someone who's going through it, and you could say, look, this is how I dealt with it badly. I would recommend maybe try this because it would have worked better for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, from the very start, that's really been my main message. You know, don't get to my point. Don't get to the point where, you know, you're not sleeping and you think you're going mad, and, you know, and it's very easy for me to sit here and say that, isn't it? Because I've now gone and got the help, and I'm coming out the other side of it, you know, a better person. I feel a more educated person, less judgmental, for sure. That's 100%. I'm so that for me now, there isn't a problem out there that I would not listen to and go, okay, yeah, I understand that. You know, whereas before, you know, you'd see young people going, oh, I hate life. And I'd think to myself, you're 18 years old. You know what I mean? What's wrong with you? Well, actually, you know, listen to what's wrong with them, because there might be a problem just because they're 18. It don't matter. You know, there might be a problem. So, but I mean, ultimately, you know, like I say, for me, I've come out of the other side of it a better person. I've come out of it more educated. I've come out of it with the ability to recognise problems and symptoms in others. And I absolutely love that, because I know for a fact that in the next 30, 40, 50 years, however long I live, I will help one person. I will be walking down the street and I will go, boom. That's the one person that I've been educating myself for this whole time, to be able to give them the help or signpost them or whatever it is that I do, and change one person's life. That's all you need to do. You've been successful, haven't you? You've been successful. And to be honest, guess what? I'm number one in that category anyway, because I did it for myself. I went and did it. So I've already changed one person's life, and that was my own, which is cool. That's pretty cool.
That's a big deal, isn't it? Just really quick before we finish up, because I know you've had a long day. How has the journey that you've been through affected how you speak to your lads about communicating and being more open when they're struggling with something? You know, is your relationship different with them than, say, your dad's was with you when you were growing up?
Yeah. But if I'm honest, Joe, my relationship with my father and my relationship with my children is very different anyway. I think just purely in a sense of different eras, really. You know, my dad was always, as you know, he ran the pubs. So my dad was always at work. You know, my mum was essentially the parent. Yes, I had two parents, and my dad did extensive amounts of stuff for me. You know, and he moved heaven and earth to ensure that I had a good childhood. And you know, we always went on holidays, and I was given the love that I needed. You know, the food was on the table. We had family meals. But essentially, you know, my dad ran a pub which, you know, sort of got prepared at 10 o'clock in the morning and didn't close till, you know, 12, 1 o'clock in the evening. So it was very difficult for my dad to find a lot of time for me, whereas it was very easy for my mum to find a lot of time for me. So, but to answer your question, the journey that I've been on, whilst it might not differ from how mine and my dad's approach was, I think it's definitely made me realise that young people are just as susceptible, if not more susceptible, to mental health problems than anybody in my eyes, because they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders. For me, you know, that we're not worried about what we're going to do in life, because essentially we decided that, you know, you and I probably decided that, what, 15, 16, 17 years ago. God, does that make you feel old, Joe? It makes me feel a little bit old. Yeah. So we, you know, we had that problem then, and actually life was a little bit easier then. You know, I remember working at bloody 15. I didn't even have a national insurance number. You know, but kids nowadays, you know, like my eldest, we're like, oh, so are you going to go to college and university? You know, and like, I don't know. It's more pushed upon them. You know, for me, education is more pushed upon them, which is great. That's fantastic. But at the same time, if it's not what they want, you know, in my eyes, it shouldn't be forced. You know, you must go to sixth form or get an apprenticeship. You know, well, actually, I didn't have that deal. So why have my children got that deal? We have a very open relationship anyway in our house, but yeah, for sure. You know, you've got to be open and honest with your children. I think it's so important. I think any young child, you know, like my wife works with early years, so she works with birth all the way up to, I think it's 7 or 8 now, 7 or 8 year olds. You know, it's very, very, very important, mate. It's very, very important to be just open. And I think again, you know, so talking about the way we've evolved in terms of, you know, your generation, my generation, the generational evolvement. Kids want explanations now, you know, like, whereas we were very much, you do as I say, not as I do. You know, kids now want that. Why? How come we're doing this? Why are we doing this? And ultimately, guess what? If you don't explain it to them, they've got these fantastic things now that we never had, called Google and YouTube. Yeah. So you know, essentially, that Google and YouTube are almost educators now, because they go, yeah. My lad did it the other day. How do you change a bike tire, Dad? And I was like, oh, I'll have a look when I come home from work, mate. 2 minutes later, he's on YouTube, how to change a bike tire. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's showing him how to do it. And that's cool. That is cool. But then I also think that's scary, because how many conversations does he have with Google and YouTube that he doesn't have with me? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like how many conversations have I missed out on there? You know, and I say that selfishly. Have I missed out on? Because for me, that's my job as a parent. You know, I want to be able to help him change a bike tire or paint a fence, or, you know, I want to take him out to go and get his first job, or, you know, help him learn how to do maths or whatever. But ultimately, you know, you've got to be very careful, haven't you? Because if you ignore him and ignore him and ignore him, as you said about listening, if you ignore him, all of a sudden they go, well, bollocks to that. I don't need to speak to him. I've got all the answers right here. Do you know what I mean? And they don't even have to leave the room, do they? You know what I mean? Whereas us, Jesus, I mean, I remember, well, I don't, but I'll pretend to remember that I had to go to the library to do my research. I didn't even know we had one, to be fair. But that's where we'd have gone, innit? You know, we wouldn't have had the interweb.
No.
But,
yeah, no, I think it's interesting. Definitely a different time, isn't it? And I feel like every day that passes, I feel like I'm growing into my dad and looking at the younger ones and going, I just don't get it. You know, and that's how people used to look at us, and I'm like, oh. But yeah, no, I think it's important. I think it's a good thing that you're so open with your lads, and I think that's a good thing, not just for you, but for them. You know, growing up, that younger generation will be more open, you know, to talking about mental health, talking about issues, and supporting each other. So I think that's really important, and I appreciate you spending the time to come on and have a chat and be so open and honest about your journey, and just give us an insight into what's next for you, mate.
Oh wow! So what is next for Scott Styles? Again, hopefully I can get on my courses that I want to get on. I definitely want to become a mental health first aid instructor. I think that you know, for the military, that will benefit them 100%, because I'll be able to make sure that, you know, that ambition to have mental health first aiders across the force will be fulfilled, because I'll be able to train people. I would absolutely love to get on the effective listening course. It's something, again, that I do struggle with, I won't lie. So it's somewhere that I can improve. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I might actually give you a ring outside of this, Joe, actually. We're taking the family to Florida in April next year.
Oh, nice.
But hopefully, as long as this COVID has had its way and left the world, fingers crossed, because I don't think we'll do it in an environment where we can't all enjoy it, you know, properly. And so fingers crossed that happens. And then I suppose I'll be looking forward to just enjoying my time. One of my kids is doing his GCSEs next year. Christ, that does make me feel old. So he's doing his GCSEs next year, and then Kieran, the younger one, will be not far behind him, and then it'll be just me and the wife. So lots of holidays, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Definitely, mate. Yeah, I've worked hard for it, pal. So why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mate, thank you so much for coming on. I realise it's Friday night. I realise it's about 35 degrees outside, and you probably didn't want to do this after a long week of work.
You're getting sunburnt indoors there, Joe.
Oh, mate, I've been outside. Safest place for me, I tell you. It's ridiculous. Can't even enjoy the sunshine anymore. But no, honestly, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate you spending your time on a Friday night chatting with me and being so open and honest about everything. So I hope it all goes well. I will keep in touch. I promise. It won't be 17 years till I speak to you again.
No, definitely not, mate. 100%.
All right, mate. Thanks again, and love to all the family, and enjoy the weekend.
You too, mate. Speak to you soon, Joe.
Appreciate it.
Bye, mate. Bye-bye.